Oh, hi. Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I rearranged some things a little bit because stuff wasn't working this morning and I had to do some restarts. And now this is directly in front of my face, which is not always a bad thing, but it's kind of distracting. Yeah. It's Wednesday at more or less 10 o'clock, which means that it's more or less time to do stuff, but who knows what, with Dyson Dungeons. Um, I'm working on this car, 1965 Shelby GT-350, and so far, um, no, got hardly anything done and took a long time to do it. Yay, that's what I do. But I got some parts prepped. I got some parts stuck together. I got some more parts to prep. Working on the engine. I'm not building this in the order that they suggest in the instructions because of the painting stuff that has to be done. So, for example, the instructions say here, yeah, step one is to put the windows in the body and the rear view mirror in the body, but I'm not going to do that because I have to paint it. I'm going to paint it blue with a white stripe. And so this stuff, you know, attaching things to the upper body of the car, that stuff can't be done until the body's painted, which is going to be some time from now. I don't even have the paint. Okay. And the interior, I've delayed the interior a little bit as I waffle around somewhat about what color I'm going to paint it. I kind of decided I'm going to go ahead with the black. The original cars all came with black interiors. I was thinking maybe it would be kind of fun to paint it, paint it a different color, like blue, maybe light blue or something, like an whole aftermarket. But then I thought better of it, so I'm not going to. Yeah, it's all pretty much just painted black. I can actually, since I'm going to paint it black and I've got some decent black spray paint, I could actually, prep some of these, like the shell of the body here and the shelf for the spare tire, these parts, these like three big parts, those I could probably, yeah, go ahead and prep and paint those. And the seats, I can go ahead and do the seats because they have a front and a back. It's another one of those things where the two pieces get cemented together, and then they're painted. But but first, I need to look. I think there's chrome trim on the seats. I have a yeah pictures of the interior of a real car here. No, I guess not. I guess they're just kind of. I guess they were done in leather, but I thought like around the edges, around the frame of them, they might be chrome, but it doesn't look like it. Yeah, I mean, every time I look at the seats, there's no chrome on them. So, yeah, I'm just going to kind of plug away at this, sort of not in order, but in the order in which it looks like I can get it done. Um, well, yeah, motor. The other thing is that the engine block is supposed to, and the headers and the intake manifold, and there was another chunk. Oh yeah, the water pump are all supposed to be painted blue, and in the picture on the cover, it's kind of a metallic blue. So I'm gonna test some of that. Well, what I'll be doing today is I'm not going to be painting parts. I'm not going to be doing that yet because they're not primed. But what I'm going to be doing is getting rid of the seams here because they're pretty obvious seams on especially on the engine. This is the top, right? This is where the oil pan goes. Yeah, there's really the seams are pretty bad. It looks like it got a little bit out of alignment. The cement was setting. Well, that's what this is going to be. It's going to be like an hour. Seriously, I'd be spending about an hour sanding down these seams on the engine block. And then what I'm going to do after that is attach. Yeah, I'm going to attach the or test fit anyway. The headers and the intake manifold and the water pump. Test fit those to see if I can um, attach those and paint them all at once. The only one that might be an issue is the water pump on the front if it gets in the way of uh, attaching the chromed oil pan, which is in here. But this looks like it's going to be a lot of work, more than I was hoping there to be. Yeah, and it's lined up back here, but that's my noise du jour. That's the noise of it's okay, but not great. Well, there it is. I need to be doing sanding and filing. And just do a little test fit here. Yeah, that sits on there. So this seam along here doesn't show, so I don't have to worry about that much. Even like right up in front, that's not an issue there. Maybe a little bit right there. Okay, that's the purpose of testing these, but everything from here back. And then on the bottom, this gets covered, but everything from here back is an issue. Yeah, well, that's that's why I've got a sanding block and sandpaper, right? I'm gonna see how amenable this plastic is to sanding. I'm really hoping I can just use this 1000 grit for all of it. Yeah, maybe I can, maybe I can't. I'm not sure. So the finer the grit, of course, the slower it is at removing plastic, and the slower it is at removing plastic, the longer it takes to get the part sanded. But the coarser the grit, the more scratch marks there are that need to be sanded out with finer grit. And I don't know how many times I have said that. That's the trade-off. Trade-off is taking more time sanding out the problems with fine grit sandpaper or more time sanding out scratch marks later. This seems to go pretty quickly. Sometimes it's really hard to tell. You know, I've said this. I'm going to just 2026 is going to be a year of just repeating stuff that I've said before, because I have pretty much just run out of things to say that I haven't already said. And one of the things I say is that it's hard to tell if the seam's going to show or not until it's painted. So that becomes one of those things. The thing it becomes, the one thing it becomes. Okay, that's not even close. The thing it becomes is that sometimes spend an hour sanding things down like I'm doing here, and it looks like it's okay, and then prime it, and then it's not okay, and then it has to be sanded again and reprimed. Sometimes it even looks okay with the primer, and then when the final coat is put on, especially if it's metallic or gloss, then it's bad again, and then all that, both layers of paint need to come off. Why is this? Well, two sides are actually not the same. Sometimes that happens, that the two sides aren't identical. And then yeah, I hate to use a file like that, but it's just in the corner there. And then they don't match up, and that creates a really significant seam that needs to be sanded out. Sanded until it disappears. So I try to tell, running a fingernail over it. Sometimes it can feel something that you can't see. So I should be able to attach the cylinder heads and the intake manifold, and then prime it. Because if these seams are a problem after it's primed, it's not in the way. They're up here, and these seams are way back here. Is this even on camera? I don't know. Here, I'll move this down. You can see, you can't really see it very well. You never can. This camera never shows things all that terribly well. Yeah, this is a challenge here. The parts didn't line up. You can see there's a different color here for the seam. Yeah, it's still there though. Down on the end here. As long as the seam is filled in, even if it's discolored, the primer should cover that. But if the seam isn't filled in, then it needs to be filled and sanded, and sometimes filled and sanded and filled and sanded over and over again until it comes out okay. So I've been told that there's like little tiny, and I've seen these. I didn't invest in one. Tiny little power sanders that would make this go really fast. I'm cautious about getting one, not because of the price necessarily, but because, well, two things. One is that it might just go boom really fast, and then I'd lose control and make a mess of the part, right? I don't want to make a mess of the part by sanding it too aggressively with a power sander. I think what I've got there is one of those situations. Yeah, I'm feeling it from both directions, where filler needs to go in there. That's too bad. But when I cemented this together, I could kind of tell there was a gap. But it's right on the top, and there shouldn't be a gap there. Not in the real thing. It's a single piece of metal. So that's going to be a thing. I'll get the filler and put that in pretty soon. Yeah, I mean, I could tell it was there. I could see it, but now I can feel it. Like there's a gap that needs filling. Whereas here, it's the same situation. There's a gap there that it isn't that one side is higher than the other. It's just that the gap is not filled. So I've got some filling in to do there. Let me just do that. What that does, though, is that the filler needs to cure, and so it just delays everything. That's why I kind of move around on the instruction sheet too. It's not just sometimes it's things need to be painted in a certain order in order to work at all. But sometimes, like a gap needs to be filled. If a gap needs to be filled, then that has to set, and then I have to do something else. And at this stage of model building, there's a lot of other things that can be done, like, the bottom of the car, the shell of the interior, a lot of those things, the bigger pieces especially, that could be, prepped and then primed and then painted. Yeah, they can be prepped and primed and painted while I'm, waiting for the filler to fill in these gaps. See, if I run my finger across it and it catches, in one direction, that just means that that side is higher than the other one and can be sanded down to match. But like here, if I run my nail across it and it catches in this direction and then catches in the other direction, then that just means that there's a divot there, you know, and it just runs the whole way. In the past, on other models, I've had some success with the cement. It dissolves the cement and it fills the gap in like a weld, but that didn't happen here. It just didn't. I have to put some filler in and hope for the best then. I'm doing this because the two sides don't match. I think what happens is that when the engine is put into the chassis, it actually shows, and so that's why the oil pan is chromed and the, all the rest of this is painted. This is the bottom of the engine. Let's see how this turns out, huh? Yeah, the seam is pretty obvious here. You can see the black line where the seam is. If it was successfully filled in, when I'm sanding it, that line would just disappear and it would all be a uniform white color, but that's not happening. I'm not feeling a gap there though. It might just be the discoloration of the seam. Of course, the bottom is working better than the top. Well, it doesn't much matter. They both have to be done. Great. I dropped my sanding block. I really don't like to use files, but sometimes it's the only way to get into those little niches and the corners. So I've got a whole bunch of different fillers, okay? And they all have advantages and disadvantages. In this case, the biggest disadvantage with some of them is they don't sand out to be as smooth as the plastic, and then it shows as a line. Okay, so what happens is I need to pick up my sanding block. So what happens is the filler goes in, but if it's not as smooth as sand out as smooth as the plastic, then it will still show as a line because it'll be a different texture. In this case, I'm going to use a gray primer on this instead of white, because this is just painted metallic, and the metallic over the gray primer actually looks pretty good. Okay, and this is painted blue, and so that'll cover the gray primer pretty well. But the reason I'm going to use the real reason I use the gray primer, because the white primer is actually kind of translucent, is that I'm going to use the green putty, Green Stuff's green putty. Which sometimes sands out pretty well. But yeah, I've got a little bit of a seam, and sometimes these things are so shallow that no, actually the one I really should use is the liquid plastic stuff, because that adheres in these tiny little niches. Sometimes with it's a tiny little indentation, the filler doesn't really adhere. But that's a problem all along here. I think I'm going to try that. I'm going to use this dissolved putty. Front of this, make the front of that even. If that isn't quite even, then the water pump won't fit very well. The problem with the dissolved putty is it shrinks in it when it cures, and sometimes it needs to be put on a couple of times. No, that came out okay. Well, if it, put it on and sand it and it doesn't work, you just put more on. Just keep at it. It's just that it takes so much longer. And I guess that's why this is relaxing, right? Because everything goes so slowly. So if I built this when I was 12, if I had built this when I was 12, it would have been practically done by now. But no, not happening. So after I put this stuff on, I'm going to do some test painting. I'm going to put some blue paint on a piece of paper, but I'll explain what I'm doing when I get around to actually doing it. Right. What I'm doing now is I'm taking some of this dissolved putty and running it down the seam here. I'm trying to fill this in. Got too much on there. This stuff dries really hard, harder than the plastic even, and so it'll sand nice and smooth, but it requires a lot of sanding. Hopefully it'll work. If it works, then I can move along with this. If it doesn't work, then I have to move along with something else. Well, I find something that works on this. White on white is just so difficult for me. Okay, I don't feel an issue with the seams on the bottom, but just in case, since I've got this out, what's it gonna hurt, right? Other than I've got more sanding to do. So the main reason I'm using this, the disadvantage is that it shrinks and might have to be redone more than once. But the main advantage is that it does sand really hard. It gets hard and sands. You can sand it to a gloss pretty well. Well, there, it's on. It'll set. I don't think it'll. Let me see how long it, if the instructions say how long it has to. Whoa. I talk about fine print, right? Keep out of reach of children. Precautions. Lots of Japanese. Yeah, that's not helpful, is it? Well, that's that. Well, that's sort of setting. Actually, probably should have cemented these on. I can still do it. But then again, there's no real rushes. Let me do something else. Yeah, I was going to do some test painting. So the engine block is supposed to be painted a metallic blue, which I don't have. But what I want to do is I had a nice little piece of paper here that I was going to use for my test swatches. Sorry, I don't know how I could misplace that. It didn't fall on the floor. Be right back. A different swatch. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test a couple of different blue colors. There's my color chart. I'm going to test a couple of different blue colors, and then I've got these glosses that I can pearlescent paint that I can use as a wash over it and see how that looks. So I've got blue, just that's a Tamiya color, just blue. And I've also got royal blue. It's kind of a nice color. Flat blue looks just like blue. So I'm gonna put those on now and let it dry. It doesn't take too long to dry, so I'll be able to come back and put the gloss on it fairly quickly. So let's see if this is even any good. Sometimes these Tamiya paints, when they sit in the jar for a while, if they sit in the jar for a while, then they get unhappy. So we'll see if this paint is still even any good. What happens is that the solvent evaporates a little bit, and then the paint doesn't. Oh my, yeah, there's not much left in here. See, that's what happens. See it? It pulls it. It pulls on it. It pulls itself off. So this paint is dead. There's not much left, so it's not much of a loss, but there it is. That's not usable. So there, useless. Ta-da. We'll try the other paints. These blues, I've got royal blue and flat blue. Maybe I'll even make a note. Royal, flat. I don't need to write royal blue and flat blue because I'll be able to tell by looking at it that they are in fact blue. Huh. So there. Well, there's lots of other little bits I can be working on. I've got all the bits, all the little bits of the engine, like the starter and a distributor and things like that, that can be prepped, moved from one container to the other. Well, that's plenty. See, this paint is still good. It covers nicely. It's way more than I need, but that's what came out of the tube. As opposed to that, you can see it didn't work at all. I guess I pulled those things off the sprue because they're all part of the engine. I'm gonna, after I'm done putting these two swatches of blue on here, I'm gonna clean those parts up, clean them, get them cleaned, and then I think what I'll do after that is I'm going to get the seats, the fronts and backs of the seats, and cement those together because they're going to be the same issue, the same issue of seams So if they're cemented now, then there's a, the cement can set and I can deal with the seams later. And then after I get those cemented, I'm going to work on the interior shell. Oh. Hmm. Okay, so the interior shell, the very back here, the tire shelf and the spare tire cover, that's not a problem. Okay, that's not, I can spray paint those black. And I wanted to spray paint the interior black, not brush it, but the problem is, I'll show it to you when I get around to it. The problem is that the spray paint, painting over the spray paint, doesn't always work. Sometimes the paint, well, I'll have to try it. What I found is that if I use the spray paint to do touch up, a little bit of touching up, that the solvent dissolves the paint underneath it. That doesn't happen with these acrylics. Once they're dried, you can paint one acrylic on top of the other, and it doesn't dissolve it. But the spray paint dissolves the paint on top of it, and there's detail on the inside of the body, like the door handles and things that need to be. Let me just show you. Okay, they need to be painted aluminum. I mean chrome. They need to be painted chrome, um, and around the edge of the gas pedal. Okay, and that little handle there, um, on the bottom of the armrest, and the window crank and the door handle. Okay, and actually there's a chrome line on that. It doesn't show on here, but it shows here. It's kind of a chrome line there. You can't see because I didn't put it on camera. These things need to be painted chrome. After it's painted, you can see that, and then this, and the edges of the pedals should be edged in chrome. So what I need to do is I need to spray some of the black on something and test to see whether the chrome paint will flow on top of that. Okay, without dissolving it underneath it. I'm pretty sure that it would work, that the acrylic won't dissolve the spray paint underneath, but I need to be sure about that because I don't want to brush paint the whole thing. Oh yeah, I was going to clean these pieces up, clean up these pieces. I'm actually going to do this inside the box here. They're small parts, and I don't want them to get lost. This is the distributor cap. This is going to have to be painted black. See where this goes. It goes, there's supposed to be, yeah, there kind of is. There's supposed to be a hole here. This goes here like that. This is going to be painted that metallic blue, and then this is glossy black. And the issue with this is there's this tiny little bit of sprue there, right? See that? And that needs to come off without me losing the piece. think this is much softer plastic than the model I built just before this. I can probably prime and paint this piece. I could probably prime this later today or tomorrow. If I can, if I can do that without losing it. This is the kind of thing that's tempting. It's tempting to paint it without priming it. I might do that. You know, yeah, I've talked about what distributors are before. You can see there's eight little prongs on the top of that. Those are what underneath the rotor spins around and ignites the gasoline in the cylinders through the spark plugs. Okay, that one's okay. This is the starter. The starter is really important because that's what starts the car. Where's the sprue on this? A little bit here. What that black is. Dirt. Hmm. Really don't see where it's attached to the sprue. That's a good thing. This is painted gloss black also. Okay, well, if it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. This part, it goes on much later. I'm not going to mess with it. Here's the fan belt. So it's attached there. I think this had two attachment points. This is going to be tricky to paint. The belt has to be black and the pulleys all need to be um, aluminum color. B, what is B supposed to be? B, yeah, silver, right? So I'm going to paint it a nice metallic color. So this is like going to be painting a miniature. I'm definitely going to prime this. And then it's going to be kind of a back and forth thing where the belt is black and then the rest is metallic, and the edges aren't quite perfect, and so I have to go back and forth on it until they're right. Maybe I can yeah, I'm going to set these up so I can prime them between now and Friday, so I can paint them on Friday. Okay, this is a mess here on the end. I have to be kind of careful with it. But there's a lot of plastic on here that needs to come off. These are going to be tricky to paint because there's no place to hold on to them. And they have to be painted on both sides. Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for, to do relaxing, tricky painting with Dyson Dungeons. So if I remember what I'm doing, I need to get a small piece of cardboard to so I can tape these pieces to it. And I'm actually going to, yeah, attach them to a cardboard and prime them inside a box to double protect them from um, being blown away by the paint. And that has happened with these little pieces. Is that just the force of the spray from the primer pushes them around, and they can be pushed right off into oblivion. Seriously, they get oblivioned. They disappear. That has happened. Quite unfortunate. But this and the fan, this other stuff I'm going to be attaching, and I'm not going to prime it till it's all assembled. So maybe there's some other things I can prime and paint as well. Why is this taking so long? Because everything I do takes forever. It's just a little ridge of there. Finally got that. Little ridges of plastic left from the sprue, but I want to get them off carefully, which is why I'm using 1,000 grit sandpaper. Okay, there. And where did this attach? The edge of the blade there. Was it just on one? No, it was on two. And cramp. What I'm going to do after I'm done sanding this fan blade is I'm going to move on to getting a piece of cardboard and the box, and I am going to attach these to the cardboard inside the box so that they are ready to be primed. They need to be primed on and painted on both sides. So I'm going to do that. I'll be back more or less on here. You can look at things, you can look at pieces. I'll be back in just a sec. I thought I had These little boxes, I just threw 2 of them away. Dang. There it is. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but what I have is on the floor here is a couple of days, no, yeah, a while ago. What happened a while ago was displaying some of the models I built. They will now be appearing. You won't be able to see them because they're going to be, behind things and far away, but they're on some shelves behind the DM on our Dungeons and Dragons show. And so they were in boxes down there, and I pulled all the boxes out to pull out the models, and the boxes are scattered, and it's just this huge. It's not huge, but it's a very large pile of empty boxes, and there's some boxes with stuff in it, and it's just a mess, and I haven't gotten around to cleaning it up, and so there it is. I'm going to take this tape here, and this is tape. Okay, and the parts that need to be primed are going to be taped to this piece of cardboard that you can't see. Okay, here. There's a piece of cardboard in the box. Do it safely. And like the fan needs to be painted on both sides, so I'll just tape it down, prime it on one side, flip it over, prime it on in the back first. And the same thing with the whole fan belt assembly. The fan belt assembly needs to be primed and painted on both sides. I'll just put this here and do the back first, and then flip it over after the primer dries. And the starter only needs to be primed once, because it's going to get primed on all of its sides. And I don't know what to do about this. I'm going to try this. This may or may not work. I don't know. No, if I keep it in the box, hopefully that will be okay. I keep the tape with it. I'm not going to paint the tape, but what I did was I put a pinhole in the cardboard and I put the little prong down in the pinhole. Okay. No, I've just got the chrome parts left. This is my get to be prime box. Oh, well, here's one thing that turned out okay today. Oh, is I was wondering, if I paint on top of the black spray paint, what will happen? I happen to have a piece of cardboard. Things were painted black here. You can just see when you spray and paint either with a can or with an airbrush how like 70% at least of the paint that you're spraying doesn't go on the thing you're spraying. It's a hugely wasteful process in terms of wasting paint. It just does. It just wastes a lot of paint. But you don't get brush marks then. So that's a good thing. So maybe after I do these chrome parts, I'm going to test some of the metallic paints on this, especially the thing that's called chrome. It's this one. It says it's chrome, and it kind of comes out kind of chromy. This is the one I want to test on that to make sure that it'll go on without dissolving into itself. Okay, these chrome parts, the problem with the chrome parts is that when they come off the sprue, like, I don't know if you can see it, but of course, yeah, like right there, that's where it came off the sprue, there's no chrome plating on that spot. Or there. So there's this big flaw in the chrome plating, this gigantic flaw in the chrome plating, where it comes off the sprue. And there's nothing that can be done about that, other than to sand or file it down without marring any more of the chrome. So chrome plated parts are, they're nice and shiny. They're very nice and bright and shiny. That's all cool, but they frequently are not. Actually, it would be helpful to do this over the black, wouldn't it? Yeah. And then the cement dissolves the chrome plating also, so that's another source of flaws. And there isn't any good way you can't repaint it and get the same look. That doesn't happen. So I'm not a real fan of this. If there was some way that they could produce these parts without attaching them to the sprue, I don't know how they could do that, but if they could, it would be way better. I'm using the file on this because I can't get the sandpaper onto the sprue bit with as much control. In fact, I probably should use teensy file. Oh, no, that's not a good idea. Sorry. I was thinking, if I use this teensy file, that, there'd be less surface area, but it's also prone to slippage. This gives me a bigger surface area on the file, and I can keep it where I want it. It's getting close to being minimized. The other one's worse. So I can't make it disappear altogether, but I can make it as small as possible. When I'm saying when I say it, I mean the part that's not plated. Yeah, and if I'm not going to mess with that any further, it'll just be end in tears. This is a huge thing here. Huge blob. No, it's not as big as it looks. Okay, it's just flaky. Well, there's five more of these chromed parts. How's the time going? Oh, I've only used a little more than an hour. Wow. just the pace I was setting in terms of not getting much done, but taking a long time to do it. I thought it would be close, actually, like more than a half hour later than it is. And I think I got that pretty good. What is this thing anyway? The carburetor? No, this is the oh, it's the alternator. Okay, yeah. Okay, well there. That goes in the little plastic bin there. And then this is the oil pan, which for a reason is chrome. I guess that's so that the oil leaks show better. Yeah, see what you end up with is it's very small. What you can see right there, that's where the sprue was, and there's no chrome plating on it. And I said, I could put some chrome paint on that tiny little spot. I don't know if that would improve the appearance or not. Actually, I'm going to try that. I am. I'm going to do that. It's like, how can it hurt, right? There's one back here. I guess they didn't want it to fall off. That's what I said I'm going to try. Is I'm going to take a little bit of the chrome paint. Yeah, there's kind of a ridge there, but at least it's chromed. I'm going to mess with that too much. I'd rather have it look like there's a little lump in the metal than to have the chrome go away. I'm going to leave this out and test that. This goes the bottom of the oil pan and goes on like that. And what this is really is it's a guard. It's a guard plate. Because the oil pan is on the bottom, and it, if the car bottoms out, you go over a rock or something like that, and it punctures the oil pan, and the oil runs out, and the engine loses its lubrication, and then it's gone. I mean, it just seizes up, and probably can't even be repaired. And so what this is a plate that goes on the bottom of the oil pan, um, to protect it from that. So if something comes up, it hits this plate and not the oil pan, and it protects it from being punctured. Unless it's so bad that it punctures both. That would be a bad thing. It's a bad thing to have your oil pan punctured. Let's keep that in mind. Even on existing current cars too, it's the same issue. You still got an oil pan. This then is the carburetor. Um, the bane of our car. Our car's carburetor never worked. Never, ever, ever. It's the thing. It's the thing that mixes the gasoline and the air before it goes into the cylinders. And there's this little valve on top that you can't see. It's inside here. It's called a butterfly valve, which is just a flap of metal. It's a flap of metal like this that goes more air, less air, more air, less air. And it's supposed to adjust. It's supposed to automatically adjust based on the heat of the engine, pretty much, to adjust it to be ideal for what your driving condition is. And our valve never worked. It's called an automatic choke. Choke means less air. Choke the engine from air, and that didn't work. So it either never closed enough, or actually what happened is it never opened. And so it was, we actually put 3 of them on. I mean, not at one time, but we replaced the carburetor 3 times, and none of them ever worked. After I'm done with these, I've got 2 more of them. I'm going to test the chrome paint on the black spray paint and also on these little bits here where the chrome is off, because that's where the sprue is attached. I want to see how that works. And of course, they put sprue attachments on both sides. I suppose that was important for them to do that so that the parts, sat still in the injection molding process, but it just makes for more flaws on the outside of it where the chrome doesn't show. This car would never score 100 points at concours. The car show contest. Running silent here now. Yep. Sorry, ran out of words. Like I said earlier, that if I were 12, this car would have been pretty much done by now. Just break the parts off or cut them off with my handy dandy one-sided razor blade. The thing that the most frequently used tool I had, besides by cement and toothpicks. It's the handy dandy one, yeah, and then just glue them together. Didn't really paint any of this stuff. Not initially anyway. Later on, I got paints. I got started to get some paints for models. Airplanes that used to put together in just an hour or so. Just cement all the parts together. Maybe rubber band the fuselage and let it sit overnight. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes I do that. But almost always those things will be finished in a weekend. Stick the decals on, and it looked like an airplane. There was seams showing. Who could tell? For some reason, seams were kind of invisible at that age. Okay, well there. I'm just going to have to decide which piece I'm going to test this on. Good. It just goes on like this, I guess. Yeah, of course. Of course, the pins don't fit in the holes, right? There we go. Well, I'm going to test it on this. I'm going to put these guys in here. If the test works, I'll touch these as well. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to. And this has got two spots. There's one spot back here, and there's one spot over on the side. I guess I'll test it on both spots. I'm gonna get a little brush, a little fine pointed brush to do this. Well, New Year's resolutions. New Year's resolution was last year was to stop saying a specific word, which I ended up succeeding at doing. I did that really well. The other was to keep my work surface clean, which I failed. This year, I have another specific word that I don't want to say, and I've been doing pretty well not saying that word. But the work surface, keeping the work surface clear, I have been just a real failure. Very much failing. Very much failing. do two things with this. Here, I'm going to do the touching up test first. You just need to use just the tiniest bit of paint off the tip of the bottle here. I don't even need to squeeze any out, I don't think. And I just want to touch the paint. Can't tell if it's painted or not. Okay, I lied. Another fine example of the mess you get when you don't keep your work surface clear. I want to drop. There. Gigantic drop of paint. A billion times more than I need. Probably, actually, that's not an exaggeration. No, I'll just leave that there. So the thing I wanted to do is, let's say I've got a door handle here. And I want to paint the door handle. Okay, well, that's not particularly great. Yeah, see what? It's not adhering. It'll sit on the surface. Okay, but I don't think you can see what's happening is that it's not really adhering. It's just kind of bubbling on the surface there. It might work, I'm not sure. I have another paint. I'm going to test that as well. Let's see how that works. Yeah, it's up here. I hardly ever use it. It's called silver. I'm going to test it and see how it looks in comparison, both in terms of appearance but also in terms of application. It's a little more viscous, thicker. It's nice and bright anyway. Might actually be better. Yeah, it's actually not bad. It adheres better. Whoa. Okay, well that got out of control. For little bits like door handles and edging around the pedals, yeah, that's going to work better. Okay, that's good news. It's good news in that now I know I can use that on the black. And for really fine lines, like I said, like the door handle and the chrome edges around the brake and the accelerator pedals, the silver is going to work just fine. I might as well just leave it out and clutter the work surface. Might as well. Yeah, for these tiny little lines like that, they're pretty indistinguishable. And I think for the, for like the steering wheel, I'll probably use I'm going to try this. No, the darker chrome. I don't see that it made it any better. I think this is too light. I think if I put this on, it would show more. Well, I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to touch these parts up with the chrome paint. It doesn't make it look any worse. I'm not sure it looks any better, but it doesn't hurt. So why not? Yeah, so instead of having white discoloration, I've got a little bit of metallic on it. And like I said, it's not making it any worse. But there's not much that can be done otherwise with these spots where the chrome is off where it was attached to the sprue. And there's just nothing else that can really be done. unless I suppose get tiny little flakes of chrome like that. Tiny little chrome flake and somehow reapply it to the surface. I don't know. I suppose that's possible. I could try that. I'll save that there and maybe try it. Might be okay. Well, there. For better or worse, that is what is done. And now I need to remember what I'm doing. Okay, yeah, I've got some parts to be primed. What did I do? Did I do that again? Did I misplace? There. I usually mean, you can't see what it is. There's this tray here. I usually put it in the middle. Well, I don't usually put it in the middle. That's where I want to put it. Right. Now this tube is supposed to protect the bristles from getting messed up. But the thing that messes them up most is the tube because of me not getting it into the tube. Well, there. Okay. Let me set this aside for a bit. Here's the piece of paper I was looking for before. Okay, what I want to do next, what I want to do, and I will because I want to. I'm going to do something I want to do. Is I'm going to get the pearlescent paint out and paint it on these guys to see if it gives it the metallic look that we're looking for. I got two of these, a dark one and a light one. And if so, then I don't need to buy blue metallic paint. And if not, well, then I do. I think the odds of this working are pretty low. I'm thinking, 10% chance that this is going to look okay. They're really kind of pretty, these pearlescents. They really are nice. Always end up with a million times more than you need. Okay. So there. And I just want a tiny bit of it, just a wash on. I have to say that that's not bad. That's kind of nice. That might actually look better than if I got a metallic. It's almost kind of dry brushing it on there. Now I'm going to have a darker blue. Yeah, I don't know why I'm trying to salvage a toothpick. All right. Those are meant to be used and disposed of. I get really cheap. I've talked about that and tried to explain it before. But, growing up with the impression that if you use something, you'll never get it again. Hmm. This is too dark. But what it might be. Hmm. No, it's way too gray. So if I do this, it's going to be the light blue one on probably, I don't know, the royal blue. It's a little more purple. Can I see on the box cover? Is there any hints here other than blue? See how shiny it is? Yeah. Oh, cool. You know, I'm gonna have to go to the hobby store anyway. I'll see if they carry Army Painter. I don't remember seeing it there though. Not at our local one. But thanks for dropping in again. Hi. I hope your shopping went well yesterday, Monday. Yeah, so I could mix it with this flat blue and then use it to brush on. Because what I'm painting is the engine block in front of the transmission, just here plus the things that the header, the header and the intake manifold that go on top of this. And the back here just gets painted metallic. It's going to be painted. It says C. Well, what C is? C is aluminum. So it's the transmission cover. So it's going to be kind of a darker color. It's not going to be chrome. But yeah, I mean, spray painting this would be just be kind of wasteful. I'm thinking that's a really good idea. Is I'll see if they have that or if they have something equivalent if they don't carry the Army Painter. I mean that kind of works. I wonder if I mix them together, what would happen? Should I try that? Thanks for dropping in. I really appreciate it. I am going to try this. I'm going to we'll do some mixing. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I don't even know if they'll mix, but I'll see. Yeah. You know, that's not too bad. This is the same thing, just got more pearlescent and less blue. Okay. Well, if I can't find the fairy dust, that ends up looking better than that. Okay, the mixture of the two ends up looking better than the overlay. And they blended. And this kind of 50-50 mix, even though it doesn't brush on as well, looks the better of the two. But I've got an option now. Yeah. Gotta have options. Then of course I need to just leave all the paints just sitting out here where they're in the way, and I can knock them over, and they bump into things and stuff like that. That's important. Okay, I'm gonna put this there and this here. Yuck! What a mess. An abject failure. An abject failure at the second year of the same New Year's resolution. Keeping work surface clear. Fail, fail, fail. I'm just going to stick these back in here. I don't want them to get lost. Knocking into each other, probably screwing up. No. Yeah, I'll deal with that on Friday. What have I got left? About an hour. Let's see. Yeah, seats. I'm going to do the seats. Let me see if I can find them and get them off and cement them together. And then if I can do that, then on Friday I can sand out the seat seams. The other thing I can do is get the bottom of the car. Wow, where's the whole interior detail, like all the gas pedals and everything? Do they not even have those? No, that's not what this is. Okay, this is the bottom of the car. That I can do too. Am I missing a whole piece of the car? Oh no, there it is. Duh. Okay, so what I was complaining about is this. It's just like the gas and the brake pedals. Okay, the edges of those are supposed to be chromed, as are the, I don't know if you can see it, the things to which they're attached, and then on the doors, the handles are supposed to be chromed, as is that little piece there. Oh, those are going to be a challenge, aren't they? Yep, they are. They are going to be a challenge. But first, let us let us all do what I was saying I was going to do, which is to glue the halves of the seats together. I don't have any pictures of the backs of the seats. I think this bit there is supposed to be chromed. We'll see if I can do that. These seats are not well molded. You can see all sorts of flashing around the edges. Yeah, and the sprue, there's a lot of sprue material on that. I get them off, test fit them, see what I've got, see what I'm dealing with here. There's probably like seat adjustment handles on here somewhere that need to be painted chrome also. Oh, yeah. Went silent again. No monologue happening here. I think today is going to be a nap day. I'm feeling a nap coming on. Yeah, naps are important for kids under the age of 6. Well, kind of our whole demographic, under 7 and over 70, I think those are the nap ages. And I'm not very good at napping. Some people can just, they'll sit down, close their eyes, and actually nap, sleep for maybe 20 minutes, and then they wake up and they say, oh, I'm all refreshed. Isn't that great? And some people will do that, and they'll wake up and feel, oh, wow, I am so groggy, I can barely function. And some people just, don't sleep at all. I kind of fall into that last category of not really sleeping at all. Well, I haven't fully decided how I want to do this yet, but this part I can paint black. I'm pretty sure. Well, just one thing at a time. Just one thing at a time here. Okay. Otherwise, things will get out of control. And the one thing I want to do is get these things cemented together so that the seams can be unseamed. They can become unseamly. Yeah, there's no alignment pins. That's terrific. I don't know. it looks like it's like a trim piece. I don't know if it's worth cleaning this up before they're cemented together or wait until after. I'm leaning toward just cementing these, getting them cemented together, and then worrying about it, the seams later. I'm doing this just like if there's like things hanging over the edge, getting it in the way of them fitting. That's on the bottom, that's not in the way. Yeah, putting these together and aligning them without getting cement all over my fingers, that'll be a trick. Yeah, well, they're both the same, aren't they? Yeah. So there's no like trim on the outside and trim on the outside. It's either, no, it is, yeah. So one is, you have to decide which goes where. Okay, well, they need to be cemented together. I get these sort of out of the way. And after the cement sets, then I'll worry about seams and whether they are showing badly or not. I think I'm just going to use clothespins to hold them together. This is why I don't use cyanoacrylates, super glues. It's because that requires that the parts be like really well lined up, right? And I don't always accomplish that. Yeah, there's a whole lot of flashing up here. The whole top of that will have to be sanded, but it's hard to tell if that's where it's supposed to be in line or not. It's just really, it's very hard to tell. And that looks okay. It looks like I can clean up any issues that need to be cleaned up. I want to make sure that that's even. Yeah, we'll see what happens with the seams. This is one of those things. I'm guessing I'm going to have to be putting a fair amount of filler in. Catching that from both sides, so it's a raised. No, they're just ugly. Um, but yeah, that's what sandpaper is for. I'm going to put a clamp on it just to do it. Hmm. Okay, well, that's it is going to be one of those it is what it is situations. I'm glad I'm doing this now because these seats are going to take a good deal of manipulation to look good. So on Friday, we might as well get ready for another bout of grumping about sanding, maybe even a little filing with these seats. Yeah, well, that is what is going to happen. Is there's going to be sanding and then probably filling in. It looks like there's filler that's going to need to be put in on these sides. And then I'm going to look at more interior views. I thought I got enough, but I'm not getting any interior views of like the back of the seat to tell whether like that thing there, that really looks like it should be chromed, or this here, definitely this here. But you know, it was a good idea to to cement these today because yeah, Friday there's just going to be a lot of sanding around the edges of these seats. I can't say this is the worst fit of any parts I've ever worked with on models, but it's pretty close. There, it's that. Okay, well, if I got it like a half hour, I might end up a little early today because it's just, you know, a day. Um, so I got the engine block. I started sanding it, but then I had to put filler in. So on Friday, I'll be sanding that down yet even more. And then if that works out, I will be attaching the cylinder heads and the intake manifold and maybe the water pump. Maybe the water pump. And if I can do that, then that cement will set, and then I'm going to paint it sort of a glossy blue. And I'm finding that if I can't find that fairy dust stuff that Ole Brager is talking about, I can mix the pearlescent and the blue together and come up with a pretty nice color that's sort of sparkly and metallic. It looks good. So on Friday I'll be sanding this filler, and hopefully that will work. It's a lot to be sanded off, but there it is. Hopefully that will work, and then I can attach the rest of the parts to it, and then prime it, and then paint it. There's uh, it doesn't look good there. No, I can. Yeah, hopefully then I can attach those parts, the cylinder heads on both sides, the intake manifold, and hopefully the water pump, because all of those parts get painted the same color, and I'd like to paint them all at one time. I know these parts can go on, the ones on the top, without interfering with anything. I need to test it to make sure that if I put the water pump on before I attach the oil pan, that I can still get the oil pan in place. Okay. Also on Friday, I will have these bits, the fan belt, the starter, and the distributor. I'll have those primed so I can paint those. That's another thing I can do on Friday. And I can spend a lot of time sanding the seats. Okay, I can spend a lot of time sanding the seats and getting those ready to be primed. I'll be spray painting those later probably. And then yeah, and then looking at the bottom of the car, okay, all of these bits here, you know, the suspension parts and the drive shaft, things like that, those get cemented on. I really would like to paint all of that together so that I don't end up with flaws because of the cementing, because the cement can dissolve the paint. But looking at this, it's just not going to happen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get these parts that are all painted black. Okay. The bottom of the car. Oh, I couldn't get the exhaust headers. What are those? Are the exhaust headers? What color are those painted? Are those silver? No, aluminum, okay. Yeah, I can do I can get parts like the exhaust headers. I can get those out and prep them and maybe prime them for painting. And then there's just a bunch of stuff here I can be doing. So I'm going to do some stuff. And here I am doing some stuff. The stuff I'm going to be doing is here. I'm going to be doing the, oh my, those are messy. Wow, really not good. The exhaust headers. I talked about how those molds come together and that there's flashing that shoots out between the molds where they don't fit. The exhaust headers, these exhaust headers are really, those are bad, really bad. They're going to need a lot of work to sand them down. The whole bottom of the car here, this is all going to be painted. This part's not going to show what this part does. This is all painted black. The whole rear axle. The rear axle, including the drive shaft. That's here. And that's a nice big part. That's all going to be painted black. There's the front suspension, those two things there. I don't know what 23 is. Traction bars, where are the traction bars? Well, instead of just wasting time looking at the box going, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to cut some of these parts out and get them ready to be primed. They're all going to be primed and painted black, so it doesn't much matter what order I take them out in. It's just, you know, they have to come off and be primed. So one of the shock absorbers is already off. It broke off the screw. So let me do those. I'm gonna do the shock absorbers, and then I'll put them on the to be primed pile. They're going to be painted, spray painted black later, but since I'm priming parts, I might as well, you know, in the next half hour, get as many parts out to be primed as I can, right? That wasn't good. It broke one off the screw. I just did what I kept saying I don't want to do, which is potentially leave a divot in a part. Hopefully I didn't. No. Okay, there. Just too much of a mess. I have created too much of a mess. Well, this will fit. I'm not taking the exhaust headers off. There's no way I'll be able to get those prepped in time to prime them between now and Friday, because those are just going to take a lot of effort to get them cleaned up enough to prime them. And there's no rush right now to do that. Now, this is, yeah, this really has to be sawn off. If that broke off, that could really be bad in terms of its impact on the part. In some ways, this is actually going more quickly than I thought, in that I'm actually getting some things done. Very slowly, very tediously, but, you know, some things have been done, which is kind of a surprise. Let me get the other shock absorber out. It's in here. No, it's not in here. Where is it? In here? Where did I put the other shock absorber? Oh, there it is, way down there. Well, before I get too far ahead of myself in taking parts off of the sprue, these would be the next ones. Wow. Okay, that's a complicated mess, isn't it? The whole front suspension, this bit. That's an impressive, oh yeah, it's got all the tie bars and everything. That unfortunately also is one of those pieces that's going to take a good amount of work, because all along the edges of all of these round pieces is flashing. So that's going to have to wait. This also, you can just see them, right? You can see that right along the sides of all of these round bits. It's flashing, which means that all has to be sanded. What about the shock absorbers? Those I got. Traction bars. There's 2 traction bars. Where are those? Those might be things I could do. Those look like the traction bars. Those are also a real mess. Yuck. Wow. Yeah. All the round parts have flashing on them, and it's really kind of serious. Okay. Well, I'm going to get my saw out again. I think I'm going to limit myself to the shock absorbers. It's like I said, one had already broken off. And the bottom of the car here. And those will get primed. And then on Friday, I'll start tackling the other bits that are going to be painted black. I think I'll do the shock absorbers first, even though they're annoying, because they're the parts I'm most likely to lose. Oh, there's a lot of that here, a lot of excess plastic. So I'm planning for all these parts on the bottom of the card, I'm just planning to use black spray paint on that. I'm going to take a look. I've got black that I used on the Pogo, which is it's a pretty good black. It's this. It's slightly glossy. I think it would look good on the interior. I'm going to check to see if there's a flatter black. If not, well, that's the way it is. Or maybe, actually, for that, be nice if they made a native black spray paint. I'll take a look at what the hobby shop has. I'm just going to I can only do what I can do with the materials I can get hold of at a reasonable price at a reasonable time. I just tell myself that, and that is the truth. It's just I can't do with what I can't do. I'm not good with an airbrush, so I can't be doing like color custom color mixing and that kind of thing. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting rid of the flashing, the little ridge of plastic that appears on these parts because the plastic leaks out of the mold. And it's pretty bad. There's a lot of it. The roundy bits are hard to hold on to. This is where I need to go. I just start to go grumpy. I'm going to be grumpy here about having to do this. Like if they if their molding was better quality, this wouldn't even be an issue. But it's not, and so it is. So with the flat black, it doesn't show quite as much as it would as if I, painted these chrome or something, but it's pretty significant. Yeah, it's one way to use up all the rest of the time on this stream, isn't it? It's sanding off little ridges of plastic that shouldn't be there. Like I have said and will continue to say that more than half of the time building these models, now that I'm not 12 years old and just gluing them together and didn't care about if I saw some flashing, I would just scrape the edges of it with a razor blade, right? And it's off now. That I'm trying to make them look better than I did then. I just end up spending all of my time sanding out these stupid flaws in the molding process. Trying not to stress it, not like emotionally stress, but physically stress it so that I snap it. I can snap at it. You snap, snap, I grump, 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 snap, snap, snap. You can snap at it, but I don't want to break it. Yeah, so this is how I can end up, using a half hour of everybody's time just cleaning up these little lines. On parts that are hard to hold and around and move around, and you can still kind of feel it. I wonder if I could use slightly coarser sandpaper on this. I'm just tempted to file it. Oh, that might be okay. Well, it's definitely using the time, isn't it? It was faster when I just had a single-edged razor blade and just scraped along the edge of it. Like that. You would think that tiny little ridges of very soft plastic would give up more easily. One would think that. One would think incorrectly. Well, the only good thing so far is I haven't broken one yet. Usually saying that, Kurt, is like a, oh, I haven't broken one. Snap. Right? It's just, that's how it goes. That hasn't happened yet, and then it does. Oh, why did I even say it? Oh, that would have been wandering around under the workbench trying to find that piece. Okay, I think these are okay now. No, feel flaws. So I'm going to go ahead and tape these to the to be primed thing. These have to be primed on both sides as well. Should probably wipe them off. Okay, and then I'm going to, in the last few minutes, clean up the bottom of the car here, and it's a nice big chunk of thing, and prime that too. So as I'm taping these on, Dyson Dungeons, yeah, Dyson Dungeons is all about a Dungeons and Dragons show, not about this. This is just a Joni loves Sachi. Joni loves Chachi equivalent of the real show. That's a spin-off of another show. Happy Days. I think it's a spin-off of Happy Days. There were a lot of spin-offs of Happy Days, if I recall correctly, which I might not. I might not remember correctly. So these get primed on one side and then flipped over and primed on the other. And I'm taping them on here so that when I spray them, they don't go flying off. And then I'm going to put them in the box and spray them while they're in the box. So I'll spray outside of the box because it's big and it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah, this is a big chunk of plastic that is attached to the side of this. Removing this looks like it'll take up pretty much all that's left of this stream. But yes, watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. It's really amazing. Currently, we're getting into some combination of really intense lore development and really silly comic relief from that. It's coming up soon. And then I believe we are about to enter into an incredibly dangerous mission, like beyond belief dangerous, total party kill potential disaster kind of situation. I don't know. I mean, that's one way to end the story arc, isn't it? It's just, well, you'll either make it or you won't. Yay. We're hoping to survive. But our DM does an amazing job of creating stories for us as characters, as players. We do a really good job of becoming our characters and portraying them. So our characters are not, you know, our characters are characters. Our characters are not the players. And yeah, you will really like it. You will really enjoy our Dungeons and Dragons show, and so you need to watch it. either with the live chat on Sundays when it streams at 2, or more likely later on YouTube or as a podcast. And this, whatever I'm doing here, which is sometimes on camera, sometimes not. If I had a director and a camera guy, camera person and a director, you know, this would be a lot. You'd actually sometimes see what I'm doing, because I have to, I'm looking at what I'm doing, and then I have to look up and say, oh, is it on camera? And I go, no, sorry, oops, because that's what happens. So this is the bottom of the car. That's the gas tank. Okay. This is the floor panels. Okay. The engine goes here. When you flip it over, you can see the engine. Those will have to be filled in probably, if they're not filled in with something else, just so that it doesn't look like there's holes there on a plastic model. Let's see how that all comes together later. I'll have to pay attention to that. It's always good when those holes get filled with parts from the bottom, okay, so that they don't show, as opposed to like from the top where they would. Excuse me. Otherwise, what you do is you're looking at this and you turn it over and say, oh, that's really cool, except for those holes. What's up with that? And, you know, I don't know. That's how the model came together. So before I paint this, I'm going to have to find out what goes into all of these openings. And yeah, like I can tell right here, like right near the front of the car, springs come up through here. Those will have to be, I don't know if they'll have to be filled in. The little prongs from the spring parts might fill it in enough that I just need to touch it up with some of the black paint that's used on the model. That would be good if that were the case. Okay, where was the sprue attached? Up here, these bits here. So this supposedly, you know, only this part shows, but I'm going to prime it and paint it on both sides, just in case, you know, just in case sometimes something's going to show that I didn't expect to show. And I would much rather have it be black, you know, than to have the bare white primed plastic showing. So I'll be using twice as much paint as I probably would need to, but the result, it might be worth it in the end, if the result is okay. Well, I'm going to just check the edges for flashing. I don't see any. It's like this, well, you know, there's a flaw here. Just a little bit of a flaw right there. It's just excess plastic where there shouldn't be. This part is actually molded pretty well, I have to say. It's kind of a surprise when any of the parts are molded pretty well. Yeah, I'm starting to get a little impatient here. I need to not do anything like I sometimes do. I'm saying, oh, I'm losing focus. I'm getting impatient. Let me do something that's delicate and could cause a problem. Or, oh, this shouldn't be a problem at all. And then it is. Okay. It's getting to be that part of the stream where oopses occur. So I'm going to kind of wrap up what I'm doing, do a recap of what I've done, and talk about what will happen on Friday. Just getting rid of the sprue bits right on the back there. Yeah, that hole didn't get formed. We might have to drill that out to make sure the part fits. Or maybe it's soft enough. The toothpick will just do it. I don't know. Parts come in from the bottom. Oh, what's this? What's this? The bane of modeling existence. I didn't expect that. Molding circles right here and here. And I think those will show from the top when the shock absorbers are put on. Okay, I'm going to, what have I got left? Like just a few minutes. Yeah, I can see why those are there because they're put in from the bottom. I'm going to get my 400 grit sandpaper here and get rid of those. And then that will be the end of it for today. So what I've done today, there's just these little raised nubbins here that are just really, really annoying. They show up on a lot of plastic models for no particular reason. Probably has to do with the alignment of the molding. Not the molding, the mold. Not mold like gross black mold that'll grow on things, but just, you know, the injection mold. That came off quickly enough. So I got the engine block sort of sanded down, but there were gaps, so I had to put filler in. On Friday, I will sand the filler. Hopefully that will work and the seams will be gone, and then I can prime that. Well, if the seams are gone, then I can assemble the other bits that get attached, the headers and the manifold, and maybe the water pump, and then I can prime the whole thing and prepare that for painting. I got a painting mixture that looks like it will create a slightly metallic blue that will look good on the engine block. Okay, I think I've got that. That was good. I got some parts ready to prime. I prepped some other parts that get attached to the engine, so that's a good thing too. I cemented the fronts and the backs of the seats together, and those are going to require a lot of prep work. They're really a mess. They're really a mess. And so on Friday, I'm going to be doing mostly sanding, although I might be able to do some painting. I might be able to do some painting on things like here, okay, like these bits, the fan, the distributor cap, the starter, and this. Yeah, that'll be fun to paint because I have to paint the pulleys metallic and the belt black. Okay, so that might be kind of fun to paint. So maybe I'll do painting on these little bits. Okay, that's a possibility. Get some painting done. Um, I will be sanding the engine block where I put the filler on. That'll be happening. And um, the seats, definitely the seats. I'll be working on those. And what I should do, but I probably won't, is clean up my work area here. So yeah, here you can see that the seats are cemented together there, and they're being clipped. You can see that the filler is sitting there curing, waiting to be sanded. You can see these parts are sitting here in this little bucket, waiting to be cemented onto this. Okay. So you can see that stuff. There's the chrome parts that will be attached to the engine later. These are ready for priming. This is ready for priming, this big piece here, which will eventually be painted black. I discovered that these roundy parts, the axle and the front suspension and the traction bars, all the round bits have a lot of flashing, all ridges all along the round parts where the plastic oozed out of the molds. The exhaust headers are especially bad, and they're going to be painted metallic, so that's going to require, these bits are going to require a lot of sanding, attention for sanding. Yeah, so there's that. I discovered that the interior here is really poorly detailed, but I'm going to do my best to try to paint the 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 chromed edges around the pedals. I'm going to try that. The dashboard is going to be a huge challenge because it's chromed. The parts are chromed, and only the bezels and the buttons on the radio are chromed. So I don't know how I'm going to fix that, but that's going to be quite an effort. Oh yeah, the radio is molded into the dashboard. Just not just not good. But I did discover that if I use the silver paint, that it goes on the spray paint okay, so I can paint the little chrome bits under the armrest and the door handle and the window crank. I can use it for that, and I'll be able to use you. Well, yeah. Well, I'm just going to keep plugging away at this little bits at a time, and eventually, as you've seen with other models, even though it doesn't look like much is happening, at some point it kind of comes together, and it usually turns out okay. I do need to go to the hobby shop though at some point and get blue paint for the body of the car. Definitely need to do that. And I'm also going to look to see if I can find a flatter black than the black that I've got currently for spraying the bottom of the car. So there, that's what has been done and what will be done, and I will be back on Friday doing more little stuff here, trying to get it closer and closer to starting to look like maybe a car will come out of it. Oh, yeah, thanks. Really a low key kind of day today, isn't it? But I'm a little bit sleepy, and this is all moving very slowly. Once again, thanks again for watching. Hardly anything happened, but it took a long time to do it with Dyson Dungeons. And I'll be back on Friday doing hardly yet even more stuff, and taking a long time to do it then. What can I say? Have a good day. See you on Friday morning at about 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Take care. Those of you who are in the snow belt and all the weather front that's moving through the U.S., take care over the next couple of days. And see you on Friday. Bye.